Why do you suppose people freak out so much when they hear a storm is coming? Now, I'm not talking about hurricanes and tornadoes and that sort of thing, but I'm talking about everyday winter or summer storms. People seem to freak out when they hear that's in the forecast. Could it be because so many are unprepared for anything other than the norm? I live in western North Carolina, and recently, about a week ago or so, we had a storm come through, and the weather people started talking about it 3, 4 days before it was supposed to be here, and people started freaking out 3, 4 days before it was supposed to be here. I understand things are different down here in the mountains, especially when you're talking about snow, because you get an inch of snow and things do shut down. Schools close, stores close, everybody takes off early from work to get home. Well, you put an inch of snow on some of these mountain roads and it's treacherous. If you live up in the mountains and you're at work when the snow starts coming, if you don't get home, chances are you might not get home. So I get that. On the other hand, down here, those conditions don't last very long, usually a couple of days at the max. So stocking up on toilet paper really doesn't make a lot of sense to me, but that's just me. Well, maybe it's because I lived off grid for a few years up north in the UP. I just don't panic when storms are in the forecast. I think I've always been of the mind that I'll do whatever has to be done to get by, to get through it. I've always felt that way. I'm not a hero, it's just that that's the way I look at it. Maybe feeling that way is what led me to the homesteading adventure that I had. Maybe the homestead adventure gave me that attitude. I don't know. Chicken come before the egg or the egg come before the chicken? I think I've always felt this way. I've always liked to have a little bit ahead just in case. When I was in the UP, it was over the Y2K scare. Some of you may remember that. And even when that came around, I didn't stock up excessively like some people did. I might have thrown a couple extra things on the shelf, but I felt like I was pretty prepared already. I talked a little bit about the weather and a little bit about special circumstances that come up, but there are other things that can come up too that you need to be prepared for. And the truth is, preparedness is going to look different to different people. Living alone is going to look different than living with family. Being 30 is going to look different than being 70. Your risks and your amount of preparedness or your type of preparedness depends on a lot of different things. Depends on your lifestyle. If you have medical conditions that require treatment, you have to be prepared for that. What if you're isolated? If you're isolated or cut off for some reason, what then? Unexpected health issues or medical crisis of some sort? In normal times, we have an idea of what to do. In unusual times, do we? How about financial crisis? That happens, that comes up. I think we've all probably experienced that at one time in our life. So let's get practical for a minute. And I'm not talking about doomsday stuff, I'm talking about everyday, run-of-the-mill preparedness. In my opinion, for most issues, there is something that can be done to be a little bit more prepared. You know, when you're talking about weather and thinking about this storm that came through that I was talking about earlier, it doesn't seem unreasonable to me to have a little bit extra food on the shelf. And I'm not talking about running to the store when you hear about the storm. I'm talking about every day having a few extra things on the shelf for those just-in-case times. That doesn't seem unreasonable to me. We've got a crawl space in our house, and we've got a little pantry down there, a couple of shelves with canned goods and a few other things. We have a couple of those air-sealed totes down there, so we filled a few things in there, just in case. We rotate them out to replace them, keep them fresh. That doesn't seem unreasonable to me. That seems like a good thing for anybody to do at any time. There are a lot of little things you can do. You know, if the power goes out, where are you going to do your cooking? You have a barbecue grill? That'll work. You got an extra cylinder? That'd probably be a good idea. Those kind of things. I'm talking about being financially prepared. Really comes down to two things: the emergencies that you need to pay for and the things that you need to plan for. And both of them are part of being prepared. The things that you know are coming, you plan for. You know, the things that you don't know coming, you have a little reserve that you can rely on when those things pop up. And again, and I've said this 100 times, I'm just giving you my opinion on things. That's all I can ever give you is my opinion on things. You perfectly fine if you disagree. To me, a little nest egg is a good thing to have, regardless of your financial situation. You know, it seems to me to be a good idea to have a little nest egg. And I think most of us could put a few bucks away for emergencies. How much? I don't know. Depends on your lifestyle. Depends on how adaptable you are. It depends on how many things you need. The less you need, the less you have to put away, I suppose. If you had a $2,000 car repair, how would that affect you? How would that affect your day-to-day lifestyle? If your septic system went out and the guy told you it was going to be $5,000 to fix it, how would that affect you? Now, needing new tires for the car, that's not an emergency in my book because we all know that we're going to have to replace the tires on the car. So that's something we need to plan for ahead of time. That's still being prepared in my book. If you take medications, how big of a supply do you have on hand? Do you have a week on hand? Do you have 2 weeks on hand? A month on hand? What's your plan if you can't get to the pharmacy to pick them up? Or if they can't be delivered for some reason? Do you have somebody that can pick them up for you? If you have an emergency, do you have somebody that you can call to get some help? Let me give you a little mental exercise if you don't mind. It's nothing scary. A practical exercise. Okay, close your eyes right now. Oh, come on, play along. Pretend you just splashed something caustic in your eyes and you can't see. Do you know where your phone is? Maybe you have it in your hand. That's a good thing. Maybe you don't. If you don't have it in your hand, do you know where it is? Can you get to it? If you can get to it, can you dial 911 without looking at the dial? Can you speed dial a neighbor or a relative in an emergency without looking at the dial? If not, can you get to the door of your house and somehow summon a neighbor? What would you do in that situation? Pretty easy task to learn how to dial your phone with your eyes closed. Most of us, I think, look at our dial and don't think about it. Where's the 1? Where's the 9? Where's the send button? Maybe you use voice to communicate with your phone. So, hey Google, call whatever. If you don't do that, maybe that'd be a good thing to learn. Just saying. I think most of us never think about things like that. Probably be a good idea if we did. Maybe you have already thought about it. Maybe you do have a plan. Excellent. The point is, you know, sometimes we should be thinking about these things. Not to dwell on them. Nobody wants to dwell on all the bad things that can happen because there's innumerable. But being practical about these things there's nothing wrong with that. You know, what would you do if you couldn't see? Just close your eyes for a few minutes and see what you can do and what you can't do. Obviously, we can't prepare for everything. I mean, the folks that went through Hurricane Helene here in North Carolina, was it 2 years ago now? How do you prepare for something like that? No, you can't. You can't prepare for that kind of devastation, but how likely is that to happen? How often does that happen? There are things that we could do for things that might happen, that have a better chance of happening. There are things that we can do to prepare for different things. Like I said before, depending on your lifestyle. I think we can be reasonable about what could happen and what's likely to happen. I think we can reasonably make that distinction and prepare for the things that we can. And we have to keep in mind how long the situation might last, too. I mean, around here, a snowstorm, you feel the effects of it for a couple of days, usually. You know, you don't have to plan for being isolated for a month in a snowstorm here in North Carolina under normal circumstances. Good idea to be prepared for a week or so. The point is to have some kind of a plan and be as prepared as you can be. And when I say prepared, I'm not talking about bunkers and gas masks. I'm talking about the practical things we can do to prepare for day-to-day situations. Sometimes preppers and prepping gets a bad name because there's a contingent that seems to get carried away a little bit. And even my saying carried away seems unfair, because who's to say what carried away is? So we do as much as we're comfortable doing. Any preparedness is better than none. And the peace of mind that comes with being prepared is worth the amount of time you spend on it, in my book. Okay, I'll stop preaching now, and I apologize if it sounded like that's what I was doing. It's just something I've been thinking about here recently with the recent storm that came through that I was telling you about, and how so many people seemed unprepared for a winter storm. You have your own issues to prepare for, your own likelihoods. We can't prepare for everything, but we can prepare for some things. Okay, I said I was going to quit preaching. For me, being prepared isn't about fear, it's about peace of mind. Anything you're prepared for, you can worry less about. It's about knowing that if something small goes sideways, life doesn't fall apart. How many days of food do you keep on hand? I'm curious. What else have you prepared for? Leave it down in the comments. I enjoy reading that stuff. Thanks for coming by and chatting again. Appreciate you being here. See you next week. Peace and joy, my friends.